I had one question. This warehouse is 100% my property. Period. No one else, not my father, not his wife, not a single soul, has any legal claim to it. The attorney went through the deed, examined my mother's will line by line, and confirmed. Joyce Somerville is the sole owner. The will is ironclad. Any unauthorized entry is criminal trespassing. Any attempt to force entry with intent to take property is attempted burglary, a Class 6 felony under Virginia law. I drove back to the warehouse and attached a laminated sign to the front door. Private property, no trespassing video surveillance in operation. 24/7. Unauthorized access is a criminal offense. Step 5. The bait. Late February, Sunday afternoon, I called Aunt Bev. Casual conversation. How's the weather? How's the garden? The usual small talk. Then, almost as an afterthought, I mentioned I was taking the whole week off starting Monday, March 10th, heading to Charlottesville to visit my college friend Shelby. The full week, Monday through Friday, driving back Saturday the 15th. I added that Shelby lives way out in the country, so cell service would be spotty. I might be hard to reach. I knew 3 things for certain. 1. Aunt Bev would tell Dale within 24 hours. 2. Dale would mention it to Vanessa within the hour. 3. Vanessa would see a perfect, wide-open window. An entire week with Joy 2 hours away, bad reception, and no clue what was happening at the warehouse. I felt a tiny pang of guilt using Aunt Bev as an unwitting messenger pigeon. Then I remembered her telling me in November that I was being dramatic, and the guilt vanished faster than Vanessa's loyalty to Dennis Crowell. Here's where I was actually going to be on Tuesday, March 11th. Not in Charlottesville, not visiting anyone. I was going to be sitting inside the Roanoke Police Department on Campbell Avenue, across the desk from Sergeant Elma Dorsey, filing an expanded formal complaint with every piece of evidence I'd collected. The 34 harassment incidents, the Flagstaff background check, phone records proving Vanessa was in contact with Dale while my mother was still alive and fighting through chemo, plus a formal request for a protective order covering both me and the warehouse property. I was going to be surrounded by officers, everything on record, time-stamped, the exact moment Vanessa Oakes took the bait. I made 3 complete copies of the entire file. My mother's letter, phone records, financial documents, the full warehouse inventory. 1 set went into my fireproof lockbox at home. 1 went to my attorney's office. 1 I hand-delivered to Sergeant Dorsey ahead of time so she could review it before our meeting. The week before March 10th, I checked the cameras one last time. All 4 feeds. Sharp, clear, flawless. Cloud backup active. Terrence confirmed the monitoring schedule. Everything was ready. Cameras rolling. Police had the file. Bait planted. Trap set. All I had to do was wait for Tuesday, March 11th and see if Vanessa Oakes was as desperate as I believed she was. Late on the last Friday in February, my phone rang. It was Dale. His voice was different this time. Not demanding, not rehearsed, just thin and trembling, like a man who hadn't slept in days. He didn't push, didn't lecture. He practically whispered, "Joy, please. Can we just talk about the storage unit? Vanessa says we need..." And then he trailed off. Couldn't even finish the sentence. He sounded like someone ground down to dust. No idea which way was up anymore. I almost broke right there, standing in my dark apartment, phone in hand. I almost told him everything, because somewhere beneath the anger, the betrayal, the months of manipulation, that was still my dad. The man who taught me to ride a bike in the Food Lion parking lot when I was 6. Then I remembered those phone records. Dale talking to Vanessa while Patrice sat in a hospital gown, hooked to an IV, waiting for a ride to chemo that never came. The feeling passed. Not completely, but enough. I told him I loved him. I told him I'd talk to him soon. And I hung up. Tuesday, March 11th. I woke at 6:45 a.m., barely slept, maybe 3 hours total. But the second my eyes opened, I was wide awake. No grogginess, no fog. Just a steady, building hum of adrenaline that had been charging for 3 months. I showered, put on a plain navy blazer and dark slacks, the kind of outfit that says I am a serious person with documentation, and ate a granola bar standing over the kitchen sink, because I couldn't sit still long enough for real breakfast. I packed the master binder into a canvas tote. 34 incident reports in chronological order, the Flagstaff background check, the Arizona Daily Sun article, phone record analysis, copies of Mom's letter, the deed and will, the protective order request, months of evidence in one 3-ring binder. I drove to the Roanoke Police Department on Campbell Avenue and checked in at 9:15 a.m. Sergeant Elma Dorsey was expecting me. She led me to a small beige office. Fluorescent lights, computer, Roanoke PD mug stuffed with pens. The kind of room where boring, important things happen. I laid out the binder section by section. Dorsey went through it carefully, asking questions, cross-checking dates, lingering especially on the Flagstaff connection and the phone records showing Vanessa had been talking to Dale months before my mother died. I explained the pattern. Dennis Crowell in Arizona. Now Dale Somerville in Virginia. Same playbook. Find a widower. Isolate him. Drain him. Disappear. Except this time Vanessa got greedy. She wanted the warehouse too. At 10:30 a.m., Dorsey said she would recommend the protective order and forward the Flagstaff link to their detective unit for further investigation. She offered coffee. I said yes, mostly because my hands needed something to hold. At 10:47 a.m., my phone buzzed. Sentinel monitoring. My heart didn't race. That surprised me later. In the moment, I just felt calm, quiet clarity, like the last tumbler clicking into place in a lock. I answered. Terrence's voice, steady, professional. Miss Somerville, this is Terrence with Sentinel Monitoring. I need to inform you there's a woman at your warehouse unit. She has what appears to be industrial bolt cutters. There's also an older gentleman in a vehicle in the parking area. He hasn't exited the car. I asked Sergeant Dorsey if I could put the call on speaker. She nodded and leaned in. I told Terrence not to approach, keep recording, and asked how long she'd been there. Approximately 4 minutes. She's already working on the first padlock. Dorsey didn't hesitate. She grabbed her desk radio and dispatched a patrol unit to the Williamson Road Industrial Park. 2 officers. I sat in that beige office and listened to the radio traffic while Terrence stayed on the line. He narrated in the same calm voice. She's through the first lock, dropped it on the ground, starting on the second one. I pictured it on the 4 camera feeds I'd installed. Every angle covered, every second recorded in 4K, backed up to the cloud in real time. The footage later confirmed every detail. Vanessa Oakes arrived at 10:43 a.m. in a white Lexus sedan, designer jeans, cream silk blouse. Apparently she dressed up for a felony. She walked to the door carrying a black duffel bag and 36-inch industrial bolt cutters. She stopped in front of the laminated sign. The camera caught her eyes moving across the words. Private property, no trespassing, video surveillance, criminal offense. She read every line, paused for exactly 2 seconds. Then she positioned the cutters on the first Abuse padlock and started squeezing. Dale sat in his Chevy Silverado in the parking lot, engine running, hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel. He never got out, just stared straight ahead like a man who knew he was in the wrong place but couldn't make himself leave. Vanessa cut through the first padlock at 10:53 a.m., dropped it, kicked it aside, moved to the second. She was moving fast now, focused. She'd clearly researched the locks, attacking the shackle at the correct angle. But even with industrial tools, a commercial abuse takes time and real force. She was still working when the patrol car turned into the industrial park at 10:56 a.m., 9 minutes from call to arrival. No sirens, no lights, just a white Roanoke PD cruiser pulling quietly into the lot. 2 officers stepped out and approached on foot. Vanessa had the bolt cutters mid-swing on the second padlock. She heard footsteps, turned, froze. For a woman who never lost composure, the footage shows a very brief moment, maybe 1.5 seconds, where her face went from focused to calculating. Then the mask slid back into place. The officers told her to drop the cutters and step away from the door. She complied immediately. No resistance. Too smart for that. She stood with hands visible and started talking. Calm, reasonable, cooperative. The same voice she probably used on Dennis Crowell when he asked where his savings went. She told them this was family property, that her husband's first wife had left the warehouse to the family, and she had authorization to be there. She reached slowly into the duffel, making sure hands stayed visible, and pulled out a folder. Inside was a typed letter on plain white paper, addressed, "To whom it may concern," stating that Joy Somerville authorized Vanessa Oakes to access the warehouse unit and inventory its contents. At the bottom, what was supposed to be my signature. Dated February 20th. The officers examined it. Radioed Sergeant Dorsey. Dorsey walked across the hall to the small office where I still sat with my binder and my now cold coffee. She asked direct questions. Did I write that letter? Did I sign it? Did I authorize anyone to access the warehouse? No. No. Absolutely not. On February 20th, the date on that forgery, I was at the physical therapy clinic on Franklin Road from 8 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. My time card, co-workers, and the clinic's security badge system could all confirm it. I hadn't written, signed, or authorized anything. Dorsey relayed the confirmation to the scene. Vanessa Oakes was placed under arrest. Charges: attempted burglary, Virginia Code Section 18.2-91, Class 6 felony, criminal trespassing, Section 18.2-119, Class 1 misdemeanor, destruction of property, 2 commercial padlocks, $740 value, Section 18.2-137, forgery of the authorization letter, Section 18.2-172, Class 5 felony. She was cuffed, placed in the patrol car, and taken to booking. She said exactly one thing: I want my attorney. Nothing else. No tears, no explanations, no performance. Even in handcuffs, Vanessa Oakes was still calculating her next move. Dale was approached separately. He was still in the Silverado, engine running, hands shaking on the wheel. He wasn't arrested on scene, but officers took his statement and informed him that his presence during the commission of a felony made him a potential accessory. He was told not to leave Roanoke. I wasn't there for any of it. I didn't see the arrest, didn't see Vanessa in cuffs or Dale trembling in his truck. I learned the details over the next 2 hours from Sergeant Dorsey's updates and later from the security footage. My victory wasn't a confrontation. It was a phone call, a binder full of documents, and 4 cameras that captured everything in crystal clear detail. That evening I sat on my couch and watched the footage on my laptop. I watched Vanessa read the sign and keep cutting. Watched her pull the forged letter from the duffel with the confidence of someone who'd done this before. And my favorite detail, the one I rewound 7 times, was the grease smudge on the sleeve of her silk blouse from the bolt cutters. A $200 blouse ruined by her own tools. There's something about that image I'll never tire of. I made a cup of chamomile tea. sat in the dark for a while, cried for about 10 minutes, not from sadness, not from triumph, from something bigger than both. Relief, maybe, or the feeling of finally setting down something impossibly heavy I'd carried for 19 months. Vanessa Oakes walked up to my mother's warehouse thinking she was about to take everything. Instead, she handed me everything I needed to end this for good, and she still didn't know the worst part. Because the search warrant for her house hadn't been executed yet. Within 48 hours of the arrest, a judge signed off on a search warrant for the home Vanessa shared with my father. Officers arrived on a Thursday morning and went through the house methodically, room by room. In the bottom drawer of a desk in the spare bedroom, a desk that used to belong to my mother, they found exactly what I had suspected, but could never prove until that moment. A second forged document. Far worse than the authorization letter left at the warehouse. It was a general power of attorney, typed on legal-size paper, supposedly signed by Dale Somerville. It granted Vanessa Oakes full, unrestricted control over every one of my father's financial accounts, real property, investment holdings, and legal affairs, effective immediately, no expiration. My father had never seen it, never signed it, didn't even know it existed. Vanessa wasn't just trying to break into a warehouse. She was gearing up to take everything my father owned, the house, the retirement savings, whatever scraps were left, and she planned to do it with a single sheet of paper he never authorized. The warehouse had been only one piece. Dale Somerville himself was the real target. Same pattern as Dennis Crowell. Same playbook. Different state. That second forgery added another Class 5 felony charge under Virginia Code Section 18.2-172. Combined with the first forgery, the attempted burglary, the trespassing, and the property destruction, Vanessa now faced 3 felonies and 2 misdemeanors in Virginia alone. Her attorney tried to negotiate. The evidence didn't negotiate back. There was 4K video of her reading a no trespassing sign and cutting locks anyway. A forged letter found in her own bag. A forged power of attorney hidden in her own desk. A documented history of identical predatory behavior in another state. And a Roanoke police sergeant holding a meticulously organized binder of 34 time-stamped harassment incidents. Roanoke PD forwarded the full case file to the Flagstaff Police Department. Arizona detectives finally had what they'd been missing when Dennis Crowell first reported his losses. A clear, repeating pattern. Dennis's missing $89,000 in savings, the unauthorized second mortgage, the credit cards opened in his name. Everything was back on the table. Flagstaff formally reopened the case and submitted an extradition request to be executed after the Virginia proceedings concluded. Vanessa Oakes now faced criminal charges in 2 states, 2,000 miles apart, linked by the exact same scheme. Bail was set at $35,000. The judge cited flight risk, pointing to her history of vanishing from Flagstaff without a trace after bleeding Dennis Crowell dry. Vanessa couldn't post it. Every dollar she'd had access to came from Dale's accounts, and those accounts were frozen pending the investigation. The woman who once dropped $6,200 on a wellness retreat in Cabo, and $4,800 on a living room set she didn't need, couldn't scrape together bail when her own freedom was on the line. She sat in the Roanoke City Jail, awaiting trial. Dale was formally charged as an accessory to attempted burglary under Virginia Code, Section 18.2-18. He cooperated from the first hour, gave a full statement. Vanessa planned the warehouse trip. Vanessa bought the bolt cutters at the hardware store on Hirschberger Road. Vanessa prepared the forged authorization letter. Vanessa told him it would be fine because it was family property. His attorney negotiated a plea. Dale pleaded guilty to misdemeanor trespassing in exchange for complete cooperation and testimony against Vanessa. the felony accessory charge, was dropped. Sentence: 18-month supervised probation, 200 hours community service, and mandatory completion of a financial exploitation victim program. The felony was avoided, but Dale Somerville, retired postal route supervisor, 31 years of federal service, a man who'd never had so much as a parking ticket, now carried a criminal record. For a man of his generation, one who pressed his shirts, polished his shoes, and believed your name should mean something in your community, that record was a scar that would never fully fade, and he knew he'd earned every mark of it. 3 days after the arrest, there was a knock on my apartment door. No call, no text, just a knock. It was Dale. He looked like he'd aged a decade in 72 hours. Clothes wrinkled, eyes red. He stood in the doorway and didn't try to step inside, didn't reach for a hug, didn't offer excuses. He asked one question, voice barely above a whisper. "Is it true? Was she talking to me while your mother was still—" He couldn't finish. I didn't answer with words. I went to the bedroom, opened the fireproof lockbox, and came back with my mother's letter. 3 handwritten pages, dated 3 weeks before she died. I handed it to him and stepped back. Dale sat at my small second-hand kitchen table and read his dead wife's handwriting. The apartment was completely silent. I stood by the counter and watched his face. He read slowly. When he reached the part where Patrice wrote that she knew he was soft, that she didn't blame him, that she only wanted to protect me, he set the letter down and pressed both palms flat against the tabletop, as if trying to anchor himself through his hands. He sat there a very long time. I said nothing. There was nothing left to say that those 3 pages hadn't already said better. A week later, I took Dale to the warehouse. In all the years Patrice ran her business, he'd never once stepped inside, never visited the place where she spent thousands of hours breathing new life into other people's broken furniture. That single fact probably tells you more about their marriage than anything else. He walked through the door and stopped dead. Rows of restored pieces stretched the length of the space. A teak dining set polished to warm amber. A 1962 walnut bookcase with original brass hardware. A flawless Eames lounge chair. A dozen credenzas and cabinets in walnut and rosewood, each more beautiful than the last. And there, centered on the back wall, the Hans Wegner credenza, the one Patrice had quietly moved from the dining room while Dale thought it was still sitting in the garage. In the far corner, on industrial shelving, the family heirlooms I'd been quietly smuggling out of the house for months. Grandmother's gold brooch and pearls, the 60-year-old sterling flatware set, Patrice's watercolor paintings, 3 generations of family photo albums. My father stood in the middle of 18 years of his wife's work and finally understood what had been right beside him the whole time, what he'd never bothered to see. Not just the furniture, not just the money, the love, the skill, the patience, the thousands of hours she poured into turning discarded things into something lasting. And in her final months, she'd spent every ounce of strength protecting it all, not for herself, but for me, because she knew he wouldn't. Dale filed for annulment the following week. His attorney presented the evidence. Marriage procured under fraudulent pretenses, criminal charges pending against the spouse, duration under 12 months, documented history of predatory behavior. The judge reviewed everything and granted the annulment 6 weeks later. The marriage was legally voided, as if it had never existed. Vanessa Oakes received nothing. No alimony, no property division, no claim on the house, no claim on anything. In May, I signed a lease on a small retail space on Campbell Avenue in downtown Roanoke. I spent 2 weeks painting walls, installing shelves, and arranging the pieces my mother would have wanted the world to see. I kept the absolute best of her collection on permanent display. The Eames chair, the Wegener credenza, a few sideboards she'd restored so perfectly they looked fresh off a 1958 factory line. The rest I sold carefully, the way she always had, to people who understand they're not just buying furniture. They're buying someone's craft. The sign above the door reads Patrice in gold letters on dark green. Simple. Clean. Exactly how she would have wanted it. The warehouse still stands off Williamson Road. New locks. Heavier than the ones Vanessa destroyed. I considered adding a third padlock, then decided it was probably overkill. Then I added one anyway. My mother would have done the exact same thing. My mother couldn't be here to fight for herself, but she made damn sure I could fight for both of us. And the woman who thought she could cut her way into our family's legacy? She's the one who lost everything. Thank you so much for staying with me through this whole story. If it touched something in you, I'd be so grateful if you hit that subscribe button. It means more than you know, and it lets me keep sharing these stories with you. There are more waiting right there on your screen. Tap one now. I promise it's worth it. See you in the next one.